The film starts with a man named Sean. Sean has just finished riding his bike and is sipping his energy drink. Suddenly, he notices a man who is dangling upside down. He approaches him in an attempt to help, but the man urges him to leave. A pair of goons arrive shortly after, followed by an infamous mobster named Edward. He beats up on that man and eventually kills him. Sean, who has witnessed the murder, bolts on his dirt bike and flees. The next day, he sees the news about the incident he witnessed the day before. Then he hears a sound and looks through the peephole to see who it is. Surprisingly, it's the same goons who tried to shoot him yesterday. He becomes agitated and tries to flee. Suddenly, a man named Flynn appears and tells him to keep quiet. He also assists Sean to escape. Flynn, who is an FBI agent, takes Sean to an FBI headquarters. He begins questioning him about the murder specifics. Following that, Flynn requests Sean testifies in Los Angeles because it is the only way for Sean to not being killed by Edward. He agrees. That night, they board a South Pacific Airlines flight to Los Angeles and take a seat in business class, where they will be taking over the business class area, forcing all first-class customers to shift to economy class. Edward, on the other hand, has a plan. He asks one of his men to pheromone spray the Lay's flowers. After demonstrate the safety for the passengers, the plane finally takes off heading to Los Angeles. A bomb timer is buried deep within the baggage compartment section. The clock is ticking, and the venomous snakes are ready to be unleashed. After a few minutes, the bomb explodes and unleashes the venomous snake. All of the snakes begin slithering toward the passenger seat area. One of the passengers teases her boyfriend to making out in the lavatory. A snake appears and bites the couple while they are making out. When one of the passengers taking a piss, a snake shows and blows his wiener. God, I thought bite by a snake while making out was the worst. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the pilots are busy maintaining the plane due to severe turbulence. The worst is about to happen. The avionics have failed, and the captain is attempting to reset the breakers. A snake bites him in the neck while he's resetting the breakers. The flight attendant and co-pilot check on him, and they believe he's had a heart attack. The flight attendant calls Flynn to the cockpit and tells him how the captain was discovered dead. Flynn believes they should return to Honolulu, but the journey has already been too far, and flying to Los Angeles would be a better option. A snake begins slithering towards the instrument panel. When the co-pilot spots it, he becomes panicked and hits the snake with a piece of paper, which causes the oxygen masks to tumble down. That isn't the only thing that is falling down, but also a bunch of venomous snakes. The passengers are screaming as snakes attacks them aggressively. The passengers are running around fighting for their lives, but they are bitten and killed by these venomous snakes. Snakes begin to fall through the compartments, causing serious injuries to people. One of them instructs everyone to proceed to the front of the plane, where there are no snakes there. Flynn instantly devises a strategy. He informs everyone that they must create a barrier between themselves and the snakes in order to defend themselves, and everyone takes luggage and bags to build a wall. The flight attendant, concerned regarding the safety of the siblings' passengers, begins looking for them. When she and Flynn discover them, he has a snake bite on his wrist. The siblings are terrified and in a state of despair. A snake is inches away from biting a baby when it is spotted by a senior flight attendant, who saves the child but is bitten by the snake. She manages to save the baby and brings the baby to the mother. Flynn calls FBI agent named Harris and informs him of the plane's situation. He informs Harris that he believes Edward is the one who brought the snakes into the plane. Once they arrive, Harris promises to send a rescue and backup team to Los Angeles. He also gathers his team to figure out these snakes on the plane. The boy's wrist swells up, and the baby's mother follows the traditional procedure to pull out the poison. She puts olive oil in her mouth and oozes it out of the wound. She then sucking out the poison and then spits it out. Meanwhile, Flynn instructs Sean to remain still for the time being. For the FBI, his survival is the most essential factor. He couldn't have Sean endangering himself. Harris is successful in locating a snake expert named Dr. Price. He explains that snakes do not attack unless they are provoked. When Flynn recalls the plane lease, the doctor tells him that the snakes must be triggered by a pheromone. The co-pilot is suddenly attacked by a large snake in the cockpit and stumbles down while attempting to resist it. When the flight attendant goes to check on him, she discovers the cockpit is vacant. She finds that the co-pilot was attacked by the same snake that tried to bite her. As the plane's attitude begins to dive, Flynn asks everyone to sit down and fasten their seatbelts. The flight attendant pulls out an axe and kills the snake. Flynn arrives and assists her in stabilizing the plane by pulling on the yoke in order to halt the crash. As the snake's slithering closer to the passengers, Sean advises everyone to move to the business class, where things are a little safer. However, some passengers are attacked as they flee upstairs. The largest snake then shows up and attacks one of the passengers. After tremendous effort, they were able to prevent the plane from crashing down. The co-pilot, still alive with a snakebite wound on his hand, and is eager to assist. He takes control of the plane and orders them to handle the rest. Meanwhile, the passengers have devised a plan to build a new barrier against the snakes by employing a life raft. The situation is deteriorating since the plane's air conditioning is malfunctioning, and the engines are on the verge of failing. Flynn is told by the co-pilot that he will have to manually fix the air conditioning. The senior flight attendant, who was bitten by a snake while attempting to save a baby, was unable to survive and died. Flynn comes to the electrical panel section and begins repairing the air conditioning with the guidance of the flight attendant. The lever, however, is stuck. A snake appears out of nowhere, preparing to strike him. Flynn uses a small flamethrower to kill the snake. He succeeds in repairing the air conditioning. Meanwhile, Harris hunts down the illegal trader who sold the snakes to Edward. After that, Harris calls Flynn and informs him that Dr. Price has completed the anti-venom formula and would be waiting for him in Los Angeles. All of the passengers are informed of the good news by Flynn. When Flynn goes to tell the co-pilot the good news, he discovers him dead in the cockpit, and there are so many snakes in the cockpit. The flight attendant inquires as to whether one of the passengers know how to fly. Fortunately, one of the passengers has 2,000 flight hours. But first, they must clear out the snakes in the cockpit. Flynn tells everyone to buckle up. He then shoots the windows before opening the cockpit door and releasing the snakes to the air. Everyone is clinging to live as the air sucks them. This man is a complete moron. The passenger is now attempting to land the plane. His 2,000 flight hours, it turns out, were spent on a PlayStation 2 flight simulator. He does, however, manage to land the plane. If this were not a movie, no one would have survived the landing. After they land, police and an ambulance arrive to assist the passengers in securely exiting the plane. Dr. Price comes on the scene as well, bringing the anti-venom. He injects the anti-venom into the boy's wrist, which had been bitten by a snake. Flynn goes to meet Sean as things appear to be calming down. Sean is suddenly attacked by a snake. Flynn shoots him in order to kill the snake. Everyone rushes over to see how he's doing, but guess what? He didn't die because he was wearing a bulletproof vest. Finally, Sean takes Flynn surfing in Bali, which is his dream vacation. Time's up, lads. A Sigma will like and subscribe. Chat out.